So a California gun owner shot an armed intruder. Was it self-defense in the state of California? Let's talk about this. But real quick before we jump into this video, if you think you have a fundamental right to defend yourself under the Second Amendment, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. I also want to give a shout out to one of the main sponsors of the channel, and that is USCCA. Through your membership, you get training, education, and self-defense liability protection. So hopefully nothing like this ever happens to you. But if it does happen, USCCA will provide you legal protection, and they provide you all the things that you would need to defend yourself in this type of situation, because you do not just have to worry about what happens in the incident itself, but also what happens after the fact with all the legal ramifications. So if you're in the market for something like that, if you carry a firearm, I highly recommend you take a look at them, and I'll put a link to USCCA down in the details section. So this story is coming out of Fairfield, California, and a lot of you guys were sending me links to this story, links to some of the articles, and were asking me to cover this and talk about some of these self-defense implications in the state of California. I've covered self-defense concept before on the channel, but this is a good opportunity to look at a specific case and cover how California laws relating to self-defense may cover this situation and just talk about self-defense generally. So let's get into this. So first, let's talk about the incident itself and what happened. So according to police reports, what happened is that this couple was having breakfast. They're just sitting there, and then all of a sudden there's a ring on their doorbell. They have one of those like Ring doorbells or one of those Google doorbells, and so they take a look at it and they don't recognize the individual, so they decide not to answer the door. Well, then all of a sudden, this individual, the intruder, decides to knock down their door, and that's exactly what he did. He pretty much, according to the reports, knocked the door off the hinges and came into the house. According to reports, at this point, the husband retrieved his handgun and shot what was claimed to be 2 shots at the intruder, and I think only one of them actually hit the intruder, and it hit him in the chest. After being shot, the intruder decided to run out of the house and ran across the street, where he was pretty much fatally wounded. And there was a little bit of mixed reports about whether or not the intruder called 911 himself or whether or not the homeowner actually called 911. But some of the reports were saying that the intruder, when he was across the street, when he's suffering from his injuries, called 911 and said he needed help. First responders showed up and they performed CPR on this intruder, but ultimately he succumbed to his wounds across the street. Now, there are some additional facts that are really relevant for the situation. One being that the handgun that the homeowner used was legally possessed by that homeowner. And also important to note is that the intruder himself was actually in possession of a handgun and was also in possession of what California deems to be a large capacity magazine, being a magazine that holds more than 10 rounds. The police retrieved that firearm and that magazine from the intruder, who passed away across the street. Another important thing to note is that the home invader himself was actually on parole for home invasions. So he was on parole for this type of conduct, and here he is engaging in that same conduct, in possession of a handgun he's not supposed to be in possession of, and also in possession of a magazine he's not supposed to be in possession of. So those are the basic facts of the situation that happened here. Now let's take a look at some of the California laws surrounding self-defense. Now, one thing I want to note before I get into all these elements of self-defense, before we start breaking these all down, although I am a licensed and practicing attorney in the state of California, I am not your attorney. I am not providing you legal advice. If you have a situation, if you need legal advice or anything like that, you need to talk to a professional in your area. This is just some general education and some points for you to look at and consider when thinking about this whole aspect and area of law, which is self-defense. So in the state of California, self-defense or a justifiable homicide can be met if an individual proves 3 main elements. First, the individual must believe that they or one of their family members or someone else around them is in imminent danger of great bodily injury or death. Second, they must believe that the immediate use of force is necessary to actually prevent that harm or that danger to them. And third, that individual must use only the amount of force that is necessary to meet that threat. So this is the proportionality aspect of self-defense. Now let's break down kind of those 3 main categories, because it's important to look at what each one of those actually means. So like I said, imminent danger in that first element is you having to prove that you reasonably believed that you were in imminent danger or someone else was in imminent danger or imminent risk of great bodily injury or death. What this means is that it must be happening to you right now. It can't be someone threatened to come back in a week and kill you or come back in a day and kill you. It must be happening right here and now. It is that imminent aspect. It is happening now. And the second element is reasonable belief, and it is that you reasonably believed that you were in risk of great bodily injury and death, and that you had to use proportional force right here and now. And ultimately what the jury would look at is, would a reasonable person in your shoes believe that they are at risk of great bodily injury or death, and reasonably believe that they needed to use some sort of force to protect themselves. And the last element is that necessary force, or that proportionality aspect. And it is that you use force that was proportional to the threat that you are facing. So if someone just hits you or punches you in the stomach, it's probably not proportional or necessary for you to then draw your firearm and shoot them. But if someone, like in this situation, breaks into your home, is armed, okay, well then using proportional force or using necessary force of then actually shooting that individual, in that situation, this is likely actually necessary and proportional. Now, I've made videos in the past, and there's been past comments on those videos where individuals are saying, well, someone can kill you with one punch. And yes, that does happen every once in a while. But remember, you're going to have to go before a jury, and you're going to have to prove to them that you used necessary force to meet that threat that you were facing, being someone was punching you. So it's going to be really hard for you to prove and make that argument that, oh, hey, I could have died by someone just punching me, so I decided to pull out my gun and shoot them. It's going to be a really hard argument. So those are the general elements for self-defense in the state of California. But when it comes to actually defending yourself in your home, there's a different law in California, which is the California Castle Doctrine. Under California's Castle Doctrine, you have the right to use deadly force against an intruder who forcibly breaks into your home. Now let's take a look at California Penal Code 198.5, which explains that a person will be presumed to have a reasonable fear of imminent harm when someone unlawfully breaks into their home, if the person, while in their own home, uses deadly force to protect themselves and or their family, it is justified as self-defense. Now, one of the important things to note there is that you will be presumed to have a reasonable fear of imminent harm. That kind of meets automatically one of those elements that we talked about for self-defense. So if someone is breaking into your home, if they are forcibly breaking into your home, you are given that presumption of reasonable fear just by them actually breaking into your home. Now, another thing to note when it comes to self-defense generally in California laws regarding self-defense, a lot of people ask about your duty to retreat or the whole stand your ground issue. California specifically doesn't have a statute that says you have no duty to retreat or you have the right to stand your ground. There are some states in the US that specifically have statutory language. But what the state of California does have is various case law and also criminal jury instructions that go to this aspect that you do not have a duty to retreat. So when you look at California Criminal Jury Instruction 505, what this states is a person is not required to retreat. He or she is entitled to stand his or her ground and defend himself or herself, and if reasonably necessary, to pursue an assailant until the danger of death, great bodily injury, has passed. This applies even if safety could have been achieved by retreating. So this is kind of that whole issue with the whole stand your ground and duty to retreat. If you have a duty to retreat in your state, essentially what your state is telling you is that if you have the ability to find safety, or if someone's arguing that, hey, you could have gotten away in this situation or found safety, in those situations, you have a duty to retreat. But in some states, like the state of California or other states like Florida, you do not have a duty to retreat. And even if you could have retreated, the jury cannot consider that and actually try to convict you for something. So when it comes to this case, I think the homeowners have a really strong self-defense claim. And like I said, they're going to have a lot of those Castle Doctrine laws given to them because this individual broke into their home and was armed. So a lot of those elements are just automatically going to be given to them. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to be prosecuted. I find it unlikely. And also when you listen to the sheriff in his report, he was using a lot of self-defense terminology and actually justifying what the homeowners did. So I don't think they're going to find themselves in any trouble. But again, with all these situations, when it comes to self-defense situations, you never really know. And that's why I recommend you guys always look into companies like USCCA. I've done videos in the past breaking down why I prefer USCCA. But again, if you carry a CCW, if you think you may ever have to act in self-defense, I think it's a good idea to take a look at some of these self-defense liability protection companies and see if they fit what you're looking for. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and comment down below and I'll try to answer to the best of my ability. Also, if you guys like this video and like support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm and helps to signal to YouTube that you guys see value in these videos, and therefore it pushes it to more individuals who want to hear this type of two-way news and want to get this type of information. So even if you guys don't want to leave a comment, just even commenting down below, hey, I'm just commenting to fuel the algorithm, that really helps the video and I really appreciate it. So as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and never forget to stay with Built Bar Arms Scholars and stay maintain Bar Arms Scholars.